Spinolo has her doctorate in nursing practice. She was a professor for a while. She's done lots of really interesting things, and then she became a Reiki master. So I wanted to have Julia on. We were talking about her recovery journey and her process, and about really listening to your intuition and also energy healing, and just coming from that place of science mind, science background, really interested in the science and research of things, but then also being really interested in energy and healing. So I love talking to Julia. I can talk to Julia forever, which is why we did part one and part two. So in this first part, where really we are going to dive into listening to your intuition, particularly when it comes to your own health. And if something just doesn't feel right in your body, or you've got something going on, even if you have practitioners or your doctors telling you that everything is fine, you really want to keep listening to that intuition. So you're going to hear all about Julia's story after her breast cancer and her breast reconstruction surgery, and then just kind of what happened to her with that surgery and why she decided to have her breast implants removed. Really love talking to her about this. So I hope you enjoy listening to Julia as much as I enjoyed talking to Julia. Julia, I'm so excited
Hi.
to have you on the show. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Kelly. I'm happy to be here. We have a lot to talk about.
I know, I'm excited. I think we're going to do part one, part two, because we have so much to talk about. We always do, which is
Yeah,
nice. But
yeah.
yeah, I thought where we would start, I really want to talk to you about your experience with your breast implants and removing your breast implants. But I want to talk mostly about really paying attention to our intuition, what that means, how we have to advocate for ourselves sometimes when nobody else thinks that this is really a problem, particularly when it comes to our health. And then maybe talk more about energy, because we
Yep.
always like to talk about energy and Reiki
Yes.
and all of that. So
Sure.
wherever you want to start with this, listening to your intuition and yeah, your
Okay.
own guidance.
Okay. Yeah. I've always had a strong sense of intuition, even as a child. On. I'm in my early 50s now. But as the years have gone by, I've really paid attention to that, and it just kind of built and came to fruition where I know what I know. What I know is I get to that point, and my husband finally, after 20 years of being married, he will say, "Okay, I'm on board with you with this." Because before he's like, "I don't get it. Where are all these things coming from?" I'm like, "I just know." So at any rate, going back to I've had health issues in the past. I was diagnosed with breast cancer 8.5 years ago. And that was a big turning point in my life where I really focused on my healing journey. And at the time, I had a double mastectomy and I had expanders put in and to make room for breast implants because my whole goal with um, having the reconstruction surgery was that I just wanted for people to look at me and not see a breast cancer patient. So I
Right.
wanted to look normal. And being in the medical field, I have my doctorate in nursing practice. I'm a board certified family nurse practitioner and have been in the nursing field for 30 years. So I
And you're married
feel that,
to a
and I'm married
physician.
to yes, a physician too. So we have a medical family.
Mhm.
And it's where I felt that I had all of the information, and I do, like many people, have the trust in their doctors. Um, and I do have that advantage of having the medical knowledge and being married to a physician. So I was just, you get the things like rarely things could happen, infection, whatever. And, you weigh those risks and benefits. And I was just like, I've done well with surgery before in the past. I think I'll be fine. And I ended up having to change the implants after chemotherapy and everything because they had put larger size and it was causing back pain for me. So I had them um, explanted and then put smaller ones in, and which felt fine and everything. But I just, it always just was uncomfortable having, women that do have breasts. They'll be like, oh, these things are getting in the way and bothering me. And I just thought, like, okay, this is just how it is, with this reconstruction surgery. So anyway, about in June of last year, I am back in school again to become a clinical mental health counseling professional. And
Mhm.
so after being in grad school before twice and coming in my early 50s as a new student, I just wanted to further my education and really incorporate therapy into energy work. And we'll get to that in a moment. But at any rate, I started feeling really tired, and I thought it was just an adjustment in my schedule and
Right.
something new. And but as I progressively went on for the months, I just started getting these symptoms of fatigue. And then I started having joint pain. I'm like, being a little bit older, I don't think 51 is old, but, changes in the body. So I started taking turmeric, and after 8 weeks, because I'm very by the book and, evidence based, and I was reading the research of turmeric and, trying to put all the brain stuff into my health and what was good for me. So I did the 8 weeks, and I just wasn't getting better. And then I had noticed that underneath one of the implants where my scar tissue was, there was like a more of a built up of scar tissue there. And I work with a wonderful physiotherapist that does massage and, um, exercise and stuff like that. So he worked on that scar tissue. And meanwhile, I'm still with the fatigue, the myalgias, the joint pain, just all of these things that are going on. And it was like something was released, and my health took a nosedive. I was typically swimming 2,500 meters 3 to 4 times a week, very active walker. And after that, I could barely walk up the stairs to my home. I would get short of breath. When I got up the stairs, I'd have to sit and rest before I got into the shower. I couldn't even wash my hair at some point. I had very long hair, and I was just exhausted. And then I had this rash come up, and then just these pains. And I felt that I was on chemo again.
Yeah.
And some days I felt worse than I did when I had chemo. So I started having this pain in the chest and the back and everything. And I went to my um, surgical oncologist just for them to do an MRI to check for any leaks or anything wrong with the breast implants. And so they did an ultrasound, and they're like, well, there's nothing that's going on with the breast implants. She says, I think it's costochondritis, which is the inflammation of the muscle between the ribs. And being a practitioner, I was like, this is not for me. It's not connecting for me. I'm like, I've had costochondritis before. I just don't think. And so I started, a medication regimen to help with that. Again, I felt that it wasn't doing anything. But right when I walked out the door, she
Mhm.
said, how long have you had these implants in? And I said, it's been 4 years. She said, I just got back from a conference that said that you need to have imaging done, like an MRI done within the 5 year mark. It's up to you when you want to have that done. And at that point, I had changed the insurance, and actually I was paying out of pocket for my visit to see her. And so I was like, let's just wait. I wasn't thinking anything, ultrasound was fine.
Mhm.
And I got in the car with my husband. We're riding home, and it hit me. I said, what were the implications for them to change the protocol of scanning for the breast implants for any abnormalities? And so it just started this connecting the dots. And so did the typical Dr. Google and was Googling all my symptoms. And I came across this thing. It's called breast implant illness. And every single symptom that I was having was on this list. And it's a pretty extensive list.
Mhm.
There's like 20, 25, or maybe more symptoms that women have had. And I was just like, oh my God, this is it. I started looking, and my husband, being a classic physician, says, where's the evidence-based practice for this? Where are the articles and
Right. I was
everything?
like
So I start
spin saying,
looking.
okay, yeah, all right. Well, let's see. Yeah.
show me the facts. Where's the data?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I just can't. And I just knew. And I'm reading. There's a wonderful website, a couple of website or Facebook support groups.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's just women have been suffering for years with this stuff. And I've only had it a few months. I can't imagine. I mean, like years,
Years. Yeah.
6, 7 years, or just, equating their symptoms to some other thing that there's not an organic reason why they're having these things. And this is the thing is that some people have obvious leaks
Mm-hmm.
and some people have micro leaks that are not detected. And that even, if they take them out, that it's not detected. But one of the facts I wanted to bring up was that with implants, people think that saline is safer.
Right.
And not necessarily, because silicone is coating the outside of that saline implant. So it's really the silicone that can slough off, that can cause leaks, that makes people sick.
Okay.
So I had, to do my due diligence of making sure that there was nothing else wrong with me. I consulted with 5 other physicians. I went to a pulmonologist, I went to my primary care doctor, my plastic surgeon, a couple other people that I know personally. And, there was there was nothing organic to put to. I had a slew of lab tests done. Everything was fine. They checked for everything. No leaf was, unturned.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to the pulmonologist, all these breathing tests and everything. And it's basically, I found this meme, and it's this person leaning over a casket and says doctor above, says your lab tests are fine, and
Right.
the person is
Yeah.
in the casket. That's how I felt. It's like I feel like I'm dying, but there was nothing medically or organically that was showing up. And a lot of women have been diagnosed with fibromyalgia or a
Mm-hmm.
depression, anxiety increases with this. All of these factors come in where we can't do a scan or a lab test that shows that we have this. And so I was an advocate for myself. And I met with my surgeon and I said, I want these taken out. And he said, okay. And he's, telling me I could do a deep flap, which is another reconstruction surgery. And I was like, at this point, this was my 6th surgery I've had related to breast cancer, breast reconstruction due to breast cancer. I was like, I just want them out. And immediately my symptoms went away. My shortness of breath, I had to be on Celebrex because I was having joint pain. Stop that. I felt great. I had energy. I'm able to swim now once I was, recovered from the incisions and everything. And I'm, have the flat chest now and I'm totally fine with that. And I feel like me. And it's funny because I start
Mm-hmm.
thinking about with my journey with breast cancer. And once I had the mastectomy, I automatically had something foreign put in my body.
Yeah.
So it's like me feeling like the true me because I have nothing else that's in me that is artificial.
Mm-hmm.
And it's quite refreshing and exciting. And I can't think about, well, maybe I should have just done the double mastectomy and been done with it. But I can't go back. And I think that every painful thing that we go through is an opportunity for growth, and whether that be physical or emotional. You have that mind body connection. Um, and, I'm glad that I was able to figure it out
Yeah.
and to be an advocate for myself, but also for other women or transgendered where they do have breast implants, whatever, so that people are listened to by their healthcare providers.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like I'm blaming anybody, but there is such a divide between Eastern and Western way of looking at health.
Yeah.
And my whole goal of using my medical background, but also using energy healing and everything, making it a very integrative healthcare, I think is essential
Okay.
for optimal health, and having both sides of that. I'm not saying that Western medicine is bad, and I'm not saying Eastern medicine is, woo woo, as a lot of people think it is. The beauty of the blending of the two is fantastic. So
Right.
it's almost like a testament of bringing that in, but also using your intuition as well.
Right.
So,
And intuition, I was
yeah.
thinking about that too. So lots of things have come to my mind and how I really appreciate you sharing and being open and brave because this is so many people will benefit, even if it's not about breasts and I mean, it could be anything if you know that something isn't right in you and your physicians or your practitioners aren't listening to you to keep going, to keep searching and finding those answers. And I was thinking about this has been coming up a lot too with this Western, Eastern, or what some people might call traditional. I'm like, what's traditional? Because
Yeah.
some of the, alternative therapies have been around a lot longer than the Western, what we consider traditional. But just
Right.
the marrying of the two and how important it is to not throw the baby out with the bathwater, like not throw one out because you're so ingrained in another, but to keep your mind open. And I think for you, you've always been very open-minded, and that it all is energy. Like everything is energy, everything is vibration. And I would
Yeah.
say, the mind body connection, but there's also the soul. And so I just was
Right.
kind of wondering, you said your symptoms just immediately were better. I wondered also just a little bit about, was it affecting your mental health? Because I can't imagine how it wouldn't start affecting you
Mhm.
mentally. And then is there the spiritually, like did anything come up that you were, because you feel more like you, which to me is like soul. I don't know.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Yeah, mentally I feel that I was very depressed during that time. I think my anxiety, because I had this, you think, am I crazy? Am I
Right.
making this up? And I would question myself, and that's when my intuition came in. It was like, no, you know, I just kept pushing and pushing, and you doubt yourself, and I just kind of pushed through that. But yeah, it did affect my mental health. It affected um I have a beautiful marriage with my husband, and I could see the effect of what was going on with me on him. And when I had surgery, he's like, I finally have my life back, because
Oh.
I was so fatigued, and I just couldn't do anything, and I would just lay there and cry, and
Yeah.
which is really not who I am. And I think any kind of stress like that is definitely detrimental to your soul and to your energy as well. It affects everything.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
It affects relationships, it affects everything. And yet you just kept soldiering on and through graduate school and doing all the things that you're doing.
yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit more about energy because and it's interesting to me that somebody with your background, like, and I am 100% sure that you did everything humanly and spiritually possible
Yeah,
to heal. And
yeah.
so let's talk a little bit about energy and Reiki and the place for that.
So I'll go into a little bit of background of how I got into this work.
Yeah.
Again, everything is surrounded around my breast cancer diagnosis, and I'm like, people are like, oh, this, but it's amazing how it was a catalyst for such change and healing. So, um, during my breast cancer journey, I had to go through chemotherapy, and um, those of you who have had cancer and chemotherapy, or have had family members go through that, you've probably heard of chemo brain, and it is where you
Mhm.
have all of your treatments, and you just get this brain fog. And I am classic type A, on the ball, very aware of what's going on. And after chemo, I still had the chemo brain, but it lingered on.
Mhm.
And my husband, who's an oncologist, and my oncologist, and everybody that I was consulting with are like, it may take a long time for this to go away, or this may just be your new normal. And I was like, absolutely not. I'm just no. And I'm like, whatever I can do. So that's what really started me on my healing journey. I started doing a lot of introspection, how I was treating my body, the people that I was hanging around with, the food that I was eating, the alcohol I was consuming, the TV shows I was watching. I looked at every single aspect of my life, and I'm like, what can change? And I made such huge changes. I had relationships that I had for decades, um, that
Mhm.
I'm no longer in. Um, I stopped drinking. I was an occasional smoker. I stopped smoking. I stopped watching TV. I was looking at the shows. I did everything. And so anyway, through my healing journey, really got into my spirituality, where I was doing mindfulness and meditation and listening to different spiritual teachers such as Paul Selig, who I think is fantastic. He's a channeler, and his work really helped me through my healing process. And so, at any rate, I had met a couple of people in a healing community here in Atlanta, and I was invited to go to a group meditation. I was like, sure, I'll go. And I went, and it was a beautiful group meditation, and you could feel the energy in the room. And at the end of the meditation, there was a group of pranic energy healers. Now, there's an umbrella of energy work, and there are so many things that can fall underneath it. They're different modalities, but essentially they work on the same thing. It was energy. And we'll go into the description of energy in a little bit. But so I was like, okay, I was open to, I'll just try this. And, I'm watching people and they're sitting in chairs and the practitioners are kind of waving their hands and the people are sitting there. And it's about 10, 15 minutes max, each person. And so they're like, how are you feeling? I was like, I'm okay, And I said, I've been through cancer treatment and stuff. And they're like, okay, a very sweet lady. And she did the thing. And so I'm like, great. So I put a donation in the donation box. And I had no expectations going into this. And so I'm driving home, and I lived like 45 minutes away from the center where I was doing the group meditation. And it was like the light bulb came on. I was back to being that clear, cognizant Julia that was like on the ball, whatever. And I felt energized. And I'm like, what the heck is happening to me? And I get home to my husband and I'm like, talking
Talking
to him, oh
99 of
man,
the yeah. He's
like,
like, what happened to you? Right?
where were you? What did you do?
Yeah.
Were you like
Yeah.
smoking
Did
some
you
drug
smoke
out there
something? Did you? Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
I mean, I was so energized. I don't even think I slept well that night. I was just like,
Yeah.
and I'm
Buzzy.
like, I
Hmm.
don't know what happened, but it was like the fog had lifted.
Yeah.
It was like I could see clearly, I could think clearly. I mean, I was at the point where my chemo brain was so bad that I would walk out the door and forget to unset the alarm. And I get in the car and the alarm is screaming in the house. And my husband's like, calling, what's wrong? I'm like, I'd have to drive back. I would leave the stove on or, the gas on the stove and walk away and forget about it. I mean, there were things that could have happened that could have really harmed me or my husband or our home or our pets. And so it had gotten that bad. And it was just like everything changed. And so I was like, what was that? And I kind of knew about there's this another energy healing practice called polarity. I knew about that. My mom had that done when I was a child, and I knew a little bit about energy, but really didn't know. So I just started this, took the went down that rabbit hole and started learning about energy and energy healing. And I'm like, again, that medical person coming in, me saying, where's the evidence? How does this happen? What exactly happens in the human body to make this happen? And bringing in that Eastern side from that school of thought, it's like, it works. So why do we need to do all this damn research on it? Or why do we have to prove in papers and academic, peer reviewed papers to say this works when you have thousands of people where this is worked on? I'm like, okay, and so I did. And so I looked at different energy healing modalities, and Reiki really resonated with me. There's a lot of traditions in it.
Yeah.
You have that lineage and that commonality there. And I just really fell in love with it and went through the studies and became a Reiki master through like a year and a half.
Yeah.
And I have seen some really miraculous things on
Miraculous
the
things.
clients that I work on. And sometimes it works for people, sometimes it doesn't. People will sit there and say, well, I'm just going to try it, or we'll see what happens. And I think that people coming in with their intention is really helpful. But um energy, going to
Yeah,
back to
let's
energy,
break down and Reiki because some
yeah,
people might not know even what Reiki is.
sure,
So let's talk about that.
okay, yeah. So with energy,
Yeah.
every single thing that we have in life is energy. We are made up of cells that vibrate at different frequencies. Our heart is made up of different cells that vibrate at different frequencies. That makes the heart tissue, our bones, everything is, if you look at slides underneath the cell, even the desk here, the wood, whatever, it
It's
is
vibration.
very slow moving, but everything is vibration.
Yeah.
And so that's when how I describe it for people that are coming in new to energy healing is, have you ever walked into a room and you just feel this vibe like there has been a fight that happened between two people that are standing there, and you're like, whoa, what's going on? You don't even have to read the body language. You could just feel that shift in the
Mm-hmm.
energy. And I'm like, that's energy. Even, thoughts and prayers, people are like, prayer works. I'm like, yeah, it does, because that is you sending that energy through space and time with that intention to help, maybe not give that person what they're actually praying for, but give them that healing that they may not know that they need at that moment.
Right.
So and that's how distance energy works too, because it's all the thoughts, everything is energy.
Yeah.
So with Reiki, it's a healing modality. It was discovered in by Dr. Yusui in Japan, and he went up on a mountaintop in Japan and meditated and fasted for like 21 days. And during that time, he had meditated and he got the symbols of Reiki. And basically, it's like we all have this power within us to help heal our bodies
Yes.
and to help heal each other. And it just needs to be activated. So there are three, sometimes four stages of Reiki, but there's three, and then you can have like a super master's level. But it's Reiki 1, 2, 3.
Mm-hmm.
3 is master's level, where you could teach, and then they have another like senior master's level, and some people get that and some people don't. But it's being learning the symbols, learning the hand movements, how to do self Reiki on other people, and then do distance Reiki and to teach. So there's a whole process to it. And you have attunements done by your Reiki master that teaches you where you are more attuned and aware of the energy, so you can give to yourself and to others. So I hope that kind of makes sense. It's kind of like layman's terms.
Yeah.
And the thing with Reiki and energy healing is that energy healing is one of these things that I could tell you that you may not understand, but I could show you and you would totally get it.
Right. Right. Well,
Yeah.
you could feel it. And I think,
Yeah.
we are designed to heal. The body's
Yeah.
designed to heal if it has the right inputs, if it has so to me, any of these tools, we are energy. Everything is energy. Why wouldn't it's so much more efficient, I think, than some of the
Yeah.
other things that we do? Not saying that, medicines and surgeries and all the things have a place, but all of that ultimately when I think of all healing is internal healing is within. And so the surgeries and the things that the practitioners that we work with that help us, we either are embracing that, kind of comes back to intention. We're
Mm-hmm.
either taking that in and making the healing happen inside of us or not.
Mm-hmm.
And even like,
Mm-hmm.
when we have a surgery or something isn't right and we feel that and having to have some of the correction, but ultimately I think of healing as inside
Yeah.
job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I am an advocate still
Yeah.
for Western medicine, where I think, surgeries and medications are beneficial. But if you look at that, that's energy too. But to bounce back from that, to really see the effects of energy healing and how we can heal ourselves, it's like we need that to get better, but we also need our intuition and our own energy and being aware of that to help accelerate that healing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I see a lot of people, and sometimes a lot of people will come to me. They've been to a lot of different practitioners, they've tried a lot of different things, and they're constantly, and again, they're looking at me saying, can you help me? And I think we're not meant to heal alone, even though the healing it does come from within. I think we
Mm-hmm.
need community, we need support. But I
Mm-hmm.
do see a lot of that, like searching outside of ourselves and searching for the next thing, the next supplement, the next pill, the next whatever. And
Yeah.
I just don't see that as sustainable. Like at
Yeah.
some point, you come home to yourself, and if those things are helpful in you finding yourself and in reconnecting to the nature that you are, great. But
Mm-hmm.
ultimately, it's about being in harmony with our natural environment, being in harmony with what I would call maybe our soul, in alignment
Mm-hmm.
with our soul.
Yeah. And that's something to bring up
Yeah.
to what you're talking about is with with people that do that with supplements and energy and I mean with supplements and different things that they may
Treatments
try.
and all the things. Yeah.
Yeah, and you really want to look at the placebo effect
All right.
because you can have the data that shows, well, this isn't doing anything for you, and they're like, but I feel better. But that's that's the beauty of the placebo effect because they're like, well, a lot of people think that it's, well, that's just a placebo effect. I'm like, well, if it works, it works. It's kind of like energy healing too, and that's what they have used to say a lot of times that, well, this might could work for you because they don't want to. Nothing is guaranteed,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
but it's pretty much the same thing. You might be spending a lot of money for the placebo effect on a
Yeah.
different thing, but if that's what I
Right.
am like,
But
if
it's a
that's
real
working for
effect,
you,
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
it is. And if that's working for you, rock on.
Rock on. Yeah, like if you feel good, that's the thing. I have a lot, I'm pretty opinionated about food and nutrition and these things, but I think if you are feeling good and you are energized, you've got the energy that you feel like your mood is pretty stable, your digestion's good, then keep rocking you. Do whatever that is. And if,
Yeah,
you know, even if
yeah,
the rest of the world is like, oh, that's not healthy, or that doesn't make any sense, or there's no, scientific evidence for that. And it's like, I really don't care.
yeah. And that's it, it was such a change for me because of that
Mhm.
way of thinking, that
Mhm.
very, the concrete and the data and having the statistics and the studies. And you're like, well, there's only been a handful of studies. Okay, you know
Right,
and it's
right.
funny, I actually did a study a couple years ago during the height of the pandemic where I did distance Reiki on hospital staff and employees.
Oh, yeah.
And I had a statistician work with my dad and everything, and it was statistically shown to decrease stress in the workplace. And I presented that to the American Nurses, the American Holistic Nurses Association a couple of years ago, and it's just fascinating. And
Mhm.
so I did was like, okay, here's some data.
Yeah. Which I think when
Yeah,
you're,
I know
yeah,
this works, but here's some data for the rest of y'all.
yeah. When you're talking to those of us, like us 10 years ago, would have been
Yeah,
asking that. So when you've got to get in somehow to make an
yeah,
impression, it's fine. It's all, but
yeah.
I'm always like, the shelf life for research, I think is 20 years or so. And then we come up with new things, and it
I
takes
think
about
it's
20
less
years.
than.
I
Yeah,
know, I think it's less too,
mm,
but it's also,
yeah,
we come up with things and then it's 20 years later. Like, so we're way behind in terms of some, not all the research, but still.
well, it's called practicing medicine for a reason because it's constantly practicing. We are constantly evolving,
Yeah.
you know?
Yes, I know.
Because the things that we used to, I mean, look at back in the 50s, they had
Mhm.
cigarette commercials.
I
And then
know.
when all the data came in, it's like, this stuff's killing you.
Yeah.
And then they started putting
Oh,
warning labels and everything because nobody knows for sure and they're constantly searching.
yeah.
And it's good that it does change. It's ever evolving. So that's wonderful. But, it's just like, okay, where are we going to see that? And I hope that we see it in our lifetime where we can see this, where it is more widely accepted,
Right.
you know.
Truly holistic, truly integrative. Yeah,
Yeah.
where we're really open. Because I found that I can be a little closed off these days to medical folks, not
Mhm.
not open-minded medical professionals. And not, I mean, I think we need it. I think we need Western medicine, especially for the
Yeah.
surgeries. But I can get a little rigid around that sometimes where I'm like, but so just to stay open, just to stay,
Yeah.
I keep saying don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Like keep the
Water.
part that's good.
Yeah.
Keep the part that's working and just stay open, and integrative makes more sense to me. Yeah.
Right. And if you look with it, kind of going back with the
Yeah.
energy, there we have the seven main chakras in our body that go up and down our spine, and each of those are associated with physical but also emotional
Yeah.
symptoms in our in this human experience. And like acupressure is part of that. It looks out for the meridians, and there's,
Mhm.
hundreds of meridians throughout the body, and those all go back to the main chakras. So all of that works. So if you look at energy work, I mean, there really is like 20 maybe of different energy healing modalities, but it all works with that. So I urge people to start looking at those things and see what resonates with them. But pretty much it works on the whole energy system of the body.
Yeah, and do
It's
you
cool
have
stuff.
a better understanding? Because when you first experienced it, you were like, how is this working? How is this happening? Because I'm still very much holding that question. And a part of me
Yeah,
is like, it's mystical for a reason. Like, I don't know how
yes,
much
it is.
the brain isn't supposed to wrap itself around this because it's mystical.
Right. And it's funny because a lot of people don't get into energy healing or the Eastern modalities until they have tried everything else.
Exactly.
And a lot
Mhm.
of the times I'll have clients see me through the years that I've been practicing as a Reiki master, where they come in and they're like, I have seen every
Everybody.
doctor, everything. And again, I've had these stomach issues, and I've had upper and lower GI series. I had CD scans. Everything is coming back clear, but I'm having these things. And I know automatically solar plexus, that's our self esteem. What's going on with your self esteem? Do you have a poor self esteem? And then they start like, oh my God, yeah, how did you know that? Because I know that the energy centers in the body relate to different emotional and physical things. And a lot of times, and that's one of the reasons, it's probably the main reason why I'm going back to school and becoming a psychotherapist, is because majority of the times I am referring people out to do their own work on healing themselves.
Yeah.
And that is a lot of that mind, body, spirit of working through those root issues of why do I have such a crappy self esteem? Why? And
Right.
I ask people to get very curious of that, to kind of
Hmm.
deduce what their symptoms are. Okay, I do this. Why? Well, because of this. Why? Just keep breaking it down. And when you get to the root of those issues, you start healing those things. The body responds by healing itself.
Right.
It's
I
amazing. I've had people get better and
amazing.
they're like, well, that, and it's not I can't guarantee this is going to work for you, because again, you have to put that intention to it and know your body well enough and develop that self-awareness.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what's funny about speaking of throwing the baby out, when I went straight in out of counseling, so you jumped in counseling, I jumped out of
Yeah.
counseling for a little
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah.
And but still such important because I'm now back to it's all emotional, like really at the root, because emotions are magnetic and they drive they steer electricity, which thoughts are electric. And so it all comes back to this emotion, which I know you and I wanted to talk about that. So we'll dig into emotions and emotional neglect in part two. But is there anything that we didn't talk about for this? Does it feel like we've talked enough about advocating for yourself, listening to your intuition, just being open
Yeah.
to the fact that everything is energy and you may really want to look into some energy healing if you've got something going on?
Yeah. And I just having people be aware of that gut reaction
Mhm.
and tuning into that, and not, there are some really great physicians and medical providers out there,
Mhm.
but everybody doesn't know, one certain person doesn't know everything. They may be an expert on it. And when I went back to these physicians, I'm like, my symptoms went away, and they're like, oh, you know,
After
and
the
it made,
surgery, the last surgery,
yeah,
you go back to them
yeah.
and they're
And it
like,
was,
huh.
they're like, I'm like, oh my, they're like, well, that's interesting. And I hope that they retained that, and to make, have them be aware of anybody else that comes in to say breast implants may be causing. If you were to ask me, you know, 8 years ago whether breast implants could cause people to be sick, I'd be like, what? You know,
Mhm.
I didn't, I would have never thought that. It would be like the furthest thing that I would think of. And when I had done this post on my Facebook page, and I've had several people reach out to me And they're like, could this be causing? I was like, advocate for yourself, get them scanned, see if they need to be replaced. I'm not saying everybody needs to get their breast implants out. Some people have them and they love how their body looks and they feel fine. Great. That's fantastic. I am not against plastic surgery at all. But if something starts to happen, start really, turning those stones over. It's like looking for the pieces of the puzzle. Why?
Right. And not just accepting what you've been told. If it doesn't feel right,
Yeah.
then yeah, then it's probably not right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So is there what else nourishes you? I know some answers that you're going to have, but what else nourishes your mind, body, soul these days?
Um, I'm in a really good place. I've done a lot of work. What nourishes my soul is being in nature.
I knew. I was wait.
Um,
I was like, I know you're going to say that. Yeah, being in
yeah,
nature, right?
being in nature and finding things that cause awe.
Mm.
I, when I was going through chemotherapy, I became quite a bird watcher because I couldn't focus on a TV because it just was just too much information input. And I didn't realize that at the time, but it was the energy of the shows I was watching. I just couldn't, I couldn't handle it. So I became a bird watcher. And so I watch for things that when I go walking in my neighborhood, I don't wear any earbuds. I don't listen to anything. I'm just there in that mindfulness and being aware of my surroundings. And um, nature's such a healing gift for us. And so that nourishes my soul. Having authentic relationships and having people that resonate with you and share your energy vibe and also I enjoy, myself and, being in my solidarity of, you know, I am safe with this person. I like myself. I'm a big advocate for self-compassion. So, and still continuing to do the work. I'm not perfect and I always look for those opportunities of growth. So, that's what nourishes my soul right now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
beautiful. I love that.
Yeah.
Well, I'm
Thanks.
certainly glad that you're in my life because you've been somebody who's nourished my soul since I met you. So,
Thank you. Thank you
yeah.
so
So,
much. You
and thank you
too.
for coming on the show. And we will do part two because you and I had started talking about emotions and emotional neglect and being
Yeah.
latchkey kids and some of the stuff. So,
Yeah.
stay tuned. Everybody, come back for part two. And
Yeah.
thank you for part one, Julia. And
Thanks for having me.
yeah.